Hello, everybody, and good afternoon, or I guess good evening, or maybe even good morning, depending on what part of the world you might be in. But thank you for joining me today. We are going to walk through an introduction to manual accessibility testing. So, automated checkers for accessibility. Sorry, my chair is really squeaky. Not sure if that's picking up on the mic or not. But anyway, automated accessibility checkers are really helpful for quickly getting kind of, a lay of the land. What are some quick issues that we could maybe resolve on this website? But they cannot find everything. And there's a significant proportion of accessibility issues that have to be found with manual checking of some kind on a website. So we're going to walk through kind of an introduction. So this is not comprehensive. It is not every possible manual test that you would do on a site, because that would take us a really long time to go over. And we're just going to be here for an hour today. But what we are going to do is, if you have heard like, oh, automated checkers only find 20 to 30% of the accessibility issues on a site, the rest have to be checked manually, and you say, well, I mean, okay, but I don't really know how to do that. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So these are going to be some easy to do checks. You don't need any kind of special software or tools or anything like that. Everything that we'll use is free. So you either have it on your computer already, or you can go get it for free within a minute or two. So very basic couple of tools that we're going to use for this today. And then also, we're going to try not to get super technical, right? So if you're not a developer, you don't know code, you should be able to do most of these checks anyway. And to be able to get an introduction to, how do I evaluate if a website is actually accessible or not? And how do I figure out if, I asked a developer to fix something, how do I figure out if it actually got fixed? Or if you're a developer yourself and you're trying to figure out how to do manual accessibility testing. So this is good for all those cases. So what we're going to use today are the Easy Checks from the Web Accessibility Initiative. So this is the group that creates the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, right? Or also known as WCAG. So this is the group that creates those, and they have put together this list of Easy Checks. And I will give you a heads up right now that this Easy Checks document is in kind of an odd state right now, in that the one that I have up on the screen right now, and you should be able to just do a web search for WCAG Easy Checks and find these two documents with no problem. And it might confuse you because they do come up one after the other in the search results. There are two versions right now. So the version that I have on the screen right now is the old version, and it's really old. It's 10 or maybe 15 years old. It's quite old. However, most of what it walks you through doing is still correct and still works. So the other document that we have, and you can see right here that it says that there is a new version available. And also, I want to apologize. I've not had a good day today. And I am not using my usual monitor, and for reasons I don't fully understand, my mouse is not behaving the way I am used to on this new monitor. So I might be a little bit clumsy with my mouse today. Okay. Anyway, you can see on this old version of Easy Checks that it tells me that there is a draft new version of Easy Checks, which is true, which is the other result that you will get So here's the one that is marked draft, and you'll clearly see that it says draft in front of it. It even has draft on the page title, so that I know that this one is a draft. So we have a final published document that is really old, and it does have, I know that there's one thing in there that is no longer accurate, but otherwise that document is still good. Then we have this new document that is still in draft mode and not final. But we're going to go ahead and use this new one today because it is a little bit more thorough, and it also has tools built right into it. So we don't have to go get anything separate. So let me just quickly talk about that. On the old version of the Quick Checks, you do need to have 2 browser plugins, 2 browser add-ons or browser extensions. They are both free and both readily available, and those are, this purple cog right here is the web developer browser extension. It is available for free for all browsers. It doesn't look pretty, right? It's a developer's tool, but it does have some really helpful things in there for testing accessibility. And like I said, it's free. And then you also need some kind of color picker, and there are piles of color picker extensions for browsers, so you could play around, find one that you like. So that's what you need to do the old one. To do the new one, the one that is still in draft, it uses a series of bookmarklets. And the bookmarklets are available right here on this page. We don't have to go anywhere else to get them. So we'll just use those right here. And in fact, I've already used these before, so you can see that I've got those bookmarked going kind of right across the top of the screen there. So we're going to go ahead and we'll start working our way down through this draft document of Easy Checks. And that's probably a helpful thing to do because it is a draft document. So presumably somebody is working on this and looking to finalize it. So we can do a little QA on it and see how things go. But I have used it before, and I think it's in pretty good shape, actually. I wouldn't use it if I didn't think so. All right, so the new document, like I mentioned, is a little bit more extensive. It does have us test a little bit more than what the old document has us test. And it does give us this disclaimer, of course, that this is not comprehensive accessibility testing. So this is a nice quick introduction to, hey, I don't really understand how to do manual accessibility checking. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do. And it's a nice introduction to it. And it is a good list of things to work through. Like if you're a front-end developer, for example, like this is a great list of things to work through before you commit some code, just to make sure that you're not introducing any new accessibility issues. But do be aware that it is not comprehensive, and there may still be other issues on the page that you won't catch from going through just this short Easy Checks list. So I should be able to get through all or most of it in the 1 hour today. Once you kind of learn how to do these, you should be able to do this whole list on a website in maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It really shouldn't take that long. Of course, it takes me longer on a stream because I'm talking and explaining and going through things. But once you kind of have it down and you've done it a couple of times, it really shouldn't take that long. They really are easy checks and shouldn't be all that time consuming. So this is a list of checks that it's going to walk us through doing. So making sure that our images have alternative text, if they should have alternative text, and we'll talk about that more when we get to that section. Checking the page title, which is super fast and easy. Headings, color contrast, checking for a skip link. Let me go ahead and scroll down a little bit more here. Checking for visible keyboard focus, setting the language or making sure that the language of the page is set, and checking to make sure that Zoom works. And then we have a section for audio visual checks. So you would only do this section if you're dealing with a page that has audio or video files embedded in it. If you're looking at a page that doesn't have video or audio, you can skip that section altogether. But it will walk us through taking a look and making sure that we have captions, transcripts, and audio description. And then we have a section called form checks, which again, You would only need to do that section if you are looking at a page that has a form on it. If you don't have a form, you can just skip this section. So I think we should be able to at least get through this top list of the common checks, and we'll see if we have time to do the audio and video checks and the form checks toward the end. So let's go ahead and dive into this image alternative text, and we'll see that it quickly kind of walks us through explaining what this is all about. What is alt text, right? It's that little, if you have an image tag, you have an alt attribute that you can add to that image tag that describes the purpose of the image. So it is important to note there's a lot of nuance to alternative text. It's not as simple and straightforward as you might think. And in fact, I could probably do like a whole hour-long conference talk just on alternative text, but I'll try to keep it short today. But basically, we have three types of images, right? We have informational images, we have functional images, and we have decorative images. So first, decorative images, they don't need any alt text. They should still have an alt attribute, but it should be empty. And that's how we signal to assistive technology that, hey, like I didn't just forget about this alt text. I put this empty alt text here on purpose because this image is just here for decoration, right? It's just a little curly Q or something like that. It's not communicating any kind of information. It is strictly for visual design purposes. Then we have functional images, and those are images that are doing work on our page. They're acting as a button, they're acting as a link, or they're acting as some kind of interactive trigger for something. In those cases, those images always need to have alt text, and the alt text needs to tell me something about what's going to happen when I interact with that element, right? So if it's a linked image, it should be, where's that link going to take me when I click on it? If it's a button, like an icon button, what's going to happen when I click on that button? So the alternative text should be related to what's going to happen when I interact with that element. And then our final category is the informational images. And that's most images on the web, I think, are just informational images, right? An image that's added to a page to help comprehension, help understanding of the content on the page. And it could be anything from a simple, product picture on an e-commerce site, like here's what this product looks like, up to and including things like a map or charts and graphs and things like that that are communicating data and maybe trends over time or different kinds of data reports, basically, in images. And for those kinds of images, the alternative text should convey the purpose of the image on the page, which is not always just a straight description of what's in the picture. So if I have a picture of a laptop on a desk, for example, well, I could use that exact same picture on an e-commerce site where I'm selling that laptop, right? And in that case, the alt text is going to be a lot of details about that laptop, what brand it is, what size the screen is, right? Some basic things that you could tell by looking at the picture. You would want to include that in your alternative text. But if I have that just on a screen where I'm just trying to convey the mood of an office, right? Just a laptop sitting on a desk, the alternative text is going to be different because now in that case, the brand and the screen size and all those kinds of things, the color of it, like none of those things matter now because I'm not buying it, right? Like purchasing that item. And it's there to convey an office environment or something like that. And so the purpose of the image is different. So the alternative text would be different. And it can get pretty nuanced and pretty confusing, but generally we want to make sure that there is some kind of helpful text that's going to be there that's going to help somebody who can't see the image for whatever reason, right? Like maybe they're on super slow internet and it just didn't load, or maybe they have a vision disability and they're not able to see the images, or any other, there's a whole bunch of other reasons that somebody might not be able to see the image. As long as they can still get the information that image is conveying, then your alternative text is successful. All right, so we have some example images here, and they actually have the little bookmarklets are built into the pages of this lesson. So I think it's actually really helpful. So I can just click this button, and it will actually run the bookmarklet. And I can actually see now that the left picture, so we have the same picture here twice. The left picture just says Golden Lab and has suitable ? Is that suitable? And I would say, well, it depends on, what's this page about? Like Golden Lab is probably fine alt text if I have a page where I've got, pictures of 20 different dog breeds and I'm just kind of naming the different breeds. That might be helpful, but usually you would want to have a little bit more detail about what's happening there. Depending on what's happening, I might want to say, is a dog laying in the grass? I might, depends on what the context that we're using the image in. And then we can see that the bookmarklet flagged this right image, put a red border around it, and it said the image is missing alt text, which if we decide that that's just a decorative image, that might be fine. But if it's not a decorative image and it's conveying some kind of information, then we would want to make sure that we have good alt text on it. So if you're not familiar with bookmarklets, let me give a quick little introduction to them. There was, 20 years ago, maybe about 15, 20 years ago, bookmarklets were really popular, and you could get little bookmarklets to do all kinds of different stuff on websites. One of my particular favorites that I had was a bookmarklet that would just add random cat pictures on top of the website you were looking at. And you could just keep clicking it and it would add another cat picture every time you clicked it until it was completely covering the page and you couldn't see anything except the cats, which on some websites is exactly what you need, right? I'd rather see cats than whatever this page is telling me. And they've kind of fallen out of favor, but I think they live on with the accessibility community because there are so many super helpful accessibility bookmarklets that will help you test different aspects of your website. And basically all it is it's a little snippet of JavaScript that you can bookmark in your browser, just the same way as you would bookmark, a link to your favorite pages on the web. And when you click the bookmark, instead of it taking you somewhere, it actually runs that JavaScript in your browser. Now, when you are out shopping around the web for bookmarklets, do be careful about where you get them from. Make sure they are from a reputable source, because JavaScript is capable of doing some nefarious things. So you want to make sure that you trust the source. Because that JavaScript, it can call out, to another website. It can send information over. Most of them are not doing that at all. They're just running a little script right on the current page. But you do want to make sure that you trust who you got them from. So obviously the Web Accessibility Initiative, perfectly fine source for bookmarklets. And how you bookmark these is, you'll see this often, and it will tell you, drag this link to your browser bar. I think you can also right click and say bookmark this link. So if you can't use a mouse, you can still bookmark these. And you would basically just drag this up to your bookmark bar in your browser. So this one I've already done. It's already here, right here. I've already got it on there. And then on any website that you visit, we can give that one a try. So let's go over to my website here. And let's run this bookmarklet. I might have done that a little too fast before everything loaded, but we'll see. All right. So, I see. I think the bookmarklet adds the suitable ? I was thinking that that they had put that in the on this page as a lesson, but I guess it asks you. Okay, so aardvark logo suitable? Yes. Okay, and then we have kind of a long one here trying to describe this image, which looks like it's actually not maybe displaying all of the text. It's getting cut off by my page CSS, but that's okay. So you can see you can scroll down and it will tell you what all of your alt text is on every image, which, yes, if you can read HTML, you could inspect each of these images and get that information. if you're a developer. But even if you are a developer, this is easier and faster. So I would recommend using a tool like this. This is not the only bookmarklet available. There's many others, and I can do a separate video about the other ones. So now we have a bunch that are designated as decorative. So, I see. Okay, so if the alt text is empty, it still does this. So over here, where it says it's missing alt text, I think that's an image that's missing the alt attribute altogether, which you should never have that. You should always have an alt attribute, and it should just be empty for decorative images. And of course, it would have the text describing the purpose of the image otherwise. Okay, so once that's in your bookmark bar, you can run it on any website that you visit, and it will outline your images. It puts either, I think that's supposed to be green, but it's a weird shade, a green border or a red border around your image, and then in this yellow text, it kind of inserts the alt text on the page. If you're checking the page with a screen reader, of course, the screen reader would read the alt text out for you anyway. So makes it super easy to check that. And then it gives you a little section on what to look for, and gives you some description about what I had already talked about decorative images, functional images, etc. And then it links out to some more resources if you want to learn more. And then we can go on to the next check, which is page title. And page title is a super quick check. And let's go over what some of the things are that we're looking for. So page title, you actually they do have a bookmarklet for it, but it's a little bit extra, because basically if you just hover your mouse over the tab in your browser, and as far as I know, this works in all browsers, it will open a tooltip. Now I can't move my mouse over the tooltip because as soon as I move it off the tab, it goes away. But it will open a tooltip that tells me the full title. Now I know in Chrome, if the title is super long, it still cuts off even in that tooltip, which is kind of annoying. I'm not sure about Firefox, and this isn't that long of a title, so I can see the whole thing. But generally what I want in a page title is I want the page title to be descriptive of the page that I'm on. It's like if a screen reader user comes to a page, that page title is going to be the first thing that they hear read out. And so a quick way for them to make sure they're on the page that they expected. And then the other thing that I want is that page title needs to be unique, right? So you couldn't just have a page title that was just, the Web Accessibility Initiative on every page of the site, because now that doesn't help me when I land on a page to distinguish between one page and another. It doesn't help me figure that out at all. So you want it to be unique and descriptive, and it can also be really helpful to use the page title to communicate some of the hierarchy of the content. So this one is doing that. So we can see that the page title for this particular page is page title, which is kind of funny, but that's what we're talking about. And then I can see that there's a hyphen or a dash, and then it says Easy Checks. So I'm on page title, which is part of Easy Checks. And then there's a pipe character, and then that tells me that that's part of the Web Accessibility Initiative, or the WAI. So Easy Checks is part of the WAI. And then I can also see another pipe character, W3C. So I know that that's part of the W3C. So it's kind of a backward hierarchy of how this page fits into the overall site. And so it kind of helps me to understand, like, oh, there's other Easy Check pages and there's other WAI pages. And then if I go up out of that, there's a whole W3C site that might have lots of other things on it. So it's really helpful sometimes if the page title conveys all of that, can convey at least some of that, right? You don't always have enough space to do the whole hierarchy if you have something really complicated happening. But if it can at least give me a hint about where I am and how this current page relates to other pages, it can be really helpful. So here is the bookmarklet for checking the page title, and it just opens like this little modal dialog that has the title of the page in it, so that it's super easy for me to check. Of course, if you're a developer, you can also look in the, if it's getting cut off in the tab in the browser, you can look in the code and see what the title tag says. But of course, the bookmarklet makes it easier to do. And I have my little bookmarklet over here. And then if I don't, if I've already run the one bookmarklet on this page, and so I have all this yellow alt text here. If you just refresh the page, like all of that will go away, but I'm not bothered by it for right now. So we can just say check the page title, and we can see that it opened up this little modal that tells me the full title of the page. So this is a home page. So usually a home page is just going to say the name of the website, where we are, and then some kind of tagline to tell me what that website is and what it's all about. All right. And it walks me through checking other pages. It tells me what to look for, which I've already talked about. It gives some good and bad examples. Has a link out to learn more. If you want to dig into that even more, there is a WCAG success criteria for 2.4.2 dealing with page titles. So let's go ahead and head over to headings. All right, so headings. The most common mistake I see people make with headings is that they will use a certain heading level, not because it's the semantically correct one to use in that particular place, but because they want that particular font size and or color and or style of text. And it is important that we use headings in a correct way and that they form a hierarchy of the content on the page. Give me just a second. I need to get a drink of water here. All right. So in HTML, we have 6 heading levels, and they are H1 through H6. H1 being kind of the highest importance and H6 being the lowest importance. It is pretty rare to go much beyond an H4. I would say actually most pages you just use H1, 2, and 3. So you have to have a pretty complicated page layout if you're getting down to H5 and H6. But if you remember in elementary school having to make an outline of a document, the headings serve a really similar purpose. Different types of assistive technology can pull out that list of headings and present it to the user as an outline of the document, which is a quick way of scanning through a document to see, like, does this document even have what I'm looking for? Or, what am I in for if I start reading this article? How many different sections are there? What kinds of things does this article cover? So, of course, for sighted users, you could just quickly scroll down the page, look through the headings, and get a feel for it that way. But for users who aren't able to do that for whatever reason, it's nice that they're able to use assistive technology and get that same kind of outline of the document pulled out for them, so that it's easy to understand how the document is set up and how extensive it is and what the different sections are. All right, so we're going to check the headings on a page. So let's click this to see what this little bookmarklet does. So it opens up this little menu on the side, and I can see what the outline of my document looks like. So I have an H1, which is great. Every page basically on the internet should have an H1 near the top of the page that tells me what this page is all about. Why does this page exist? Why is anybody visiting it? What's the content here? And most of the time that H1 is going to be maybe not the exact same as, but pretty closely related to the page title, which is what we looked at in the last check. Then any sections of the page are going to be headed up by an H2. So here I can see what are headings, why are they important, checking headings, learn more, and help to improve this page. Any subsections inside those sections should be headed up by an H3. And then subsections under those are H4, etc. And it looks like these are clickable. Yeah, so I can jump around the document, which is, I think, a good, gives you a good idea of how somebody using assistive technology would experience this. They can use that to jump around the document and understand what's here and get a feel for how everything is put together. So we have some options here. We could show hidden, although it says there are 0 on this particular page. So sometimes there will be a heading on a page that's hidden for whatever reason. So this gives us an option to show those. Mark things that are visually hidden, which are headings that would be only visible to screen reader users, basically. And then hover highlight the corresponding heading when hovering over elements on the page. Oh, is that, if I go on the page, it highlights it here? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I can see. So when I hover over this, what are headings? What are headings over here gets a little blue outline on it. It's not very dark, but anyway, it is there. So here's the bookmark lid that you can drag and use for that. And it gives me an idea of what to look for. Like, do I have an H1 at the top of the list? Am I skipping any heading levels? Does the heading actually describe the content that follows it? So let's go over to a real page, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this time since we got a lot of stuff going on. Let's say check our headings. Whew, we got a lot. Okay. So we have our H1 at the top of the page. That's good. And then we have sections headed up by H2s, and we have H3s under those, and going all the way down to the very bottom of the page. Now, one thing that you do want to check when you're checking these headings is to make sure, so our H1, does that describe what this page is about? And then this H2 is this section of content here. And we would want to make sure that this heading now, oh, that's funny, it didn't work. I guess it doesn't like when you scroll after it draws that heading. But does this heading accurately describe this little bit of content that's in this section? So we would want to check that as well. As well as checking that it's the right level and that they're used in the right order. We want to also make sure that they're actually accurate. So do each of these describe the section that they're in? And I think we've recently reviewed all of these, and I think they should all be in pretty good shape. But yes, you can poke around. A lot of websites skip a heading level. It's pretty common. And a lot of times too, they get used out of order. Like they're not in the order that they should be in. So that's something else to look out for. And then also to make sure that they're actually descriptive, to make sure that the heading actually has text in it, which, believe it or not, that happens quite a lot, that will have a heading that's just sitting on the page with no text content. That happens. Or sometimes people will have an image without alt text, and that will get wrapped in a heading tag. And then we have basically a blank heading. So you want to check for all of those kinds of things. And of course, this relates back to the WCAG Success Criteria 2.4.6 for headings and labels. And we have a bunch of articles that we can go out to if we want to learn more. So let's move along to the color contrast check. All right. So what we are checking here, I think, is 1.4.3. We do have 1.4.11, which is also color contrast, but slightly different. So 1.4.3 deals with the text against the background. Oh, okay, we do have it here, interactive elements. So that's 1.4.11. So when we have text against a background, we want to make sure that if it's regular size text, that it has at least a 4.5:1 contrast ratio. And if it's large text, then we can go down to a 3:1 ratio. And when we have interactive elements, the edges of form fields, the edges of buttons, icons that are interactive, things like that, we would want to make sure that those have at least a 3:1 contrast ratio. And there are bajillions of contrast checkers out there that you can use to double check, you basically would just plug in your foreground color, your background color, and it will do the calculation. It's doing a calculation on the luminosity of the color, which is the current model used in WCAG. So they are looking at changing that model for WCAG 3 to something a little bit more robust, because this luminosity calculation, it does have some drawbacks. And so they are looking at making a more robust calculation for WCAG 3. So you should be aware of that. But we do have, oh, interesting. Okay, so we just have a bookmarklet here that basically will convert our page to grayscale. So this bookmarklet isn't actually checking color contrast ratios on the page. I think we would still need to do that ourselves. But let's go ahead and click it and convert this page to grayscale. This can be a really helpful way of identifying any areas where we have color contrast that is not sufficient, because you'll see like something just disappear. So as an example, focus right now is on this button. And so this button has the outline around it. And I can see that there is an offset, right? So there's space between the button and that outline, a couple pixels worth of space around it. So basically that sets up a situation where now I only have to make sure that that outline has sufficient contrast, which it needs to be 3:1 for an outline, against the background. If that outline was touching the button, if that little bit of space, if that little bit of white space wasn't there between the outline and the button, then I would have to make sure that that outline had a 3:1 contrast ratio with the background and a 3:1 contrast ratio with the button itself, because it's touching the background on one side, right on the outside of that outline, but it's touching the button on the inside, and it has to have at least 3:1 contrast on both sides. When you put a little bit of space in here, it makes your life a whole lot easier because it is really difficult to find 3 colors that have sufficient contrast between them, where you would have the button has enough contrast to the background, the button has enough contrast to the outline, and the background has enough contrast to the outline. So we have to check all 3 of those things. If the outline is touching the button. If it's not, then we only have to make sure the button has enough contrast and the outline has enough contrast against the background. So it makes life a lot easier. Now, most automated checkers will do an automated color contrast check for you. But where they fall down a lot is if you have used any kind of transparency, if you have any gradients in use, if you have any background images, text shadows, anything like that, they are often not able to correctly calculate the color contrast there. So you will have to do it yourself. And if you have to do it yourself, what you want to do is use one of these browser tools. Like I have this one here, this color sampler, basically, that is a little eyedropper. I can hover it over any part of a page and select the color from that part of the page. And you would want to check. So if I have text over an image, for example, I would want to check multiple places of that background image, right? Because that background image is not all the same color. So I want to make sure I'm getting the lightest parts and the darkest parts and all the mid-tone parts of the image, and take many, many samples of what that background color is and compare those to the text color to make sure that everywhere across that image, there is enough contrast between the background image and the text in front of it. Because if even one letter is over a part of the image that doesn't have enough contrast, that is a failure of either 1.4.3 if you're checking at AA level, or 1.4.6 if you're checking at AAA level. So it is a failure even if one little letter is hanging out in the wrong part of the image. And it's important to keep in mind also for responsive design that if that text wraps differently or gets positioned differently over the image at different screen sizes, you have to check all around that image at every different screen size, to make sure that it's going to pass and have sufficient contrast against the background. But flipping the whole page to grayscale is a really quick check to see, like, can I tell where that text is? Can I see it over the background? So I think on our own site, we don't put text over anything complicated for basically that reason. It's really difficult, especially with responsive design, to make sure that the text all has sufficient contrast. So we just use solid color backgrounds, and we don't really use images as backgrounds or anything like that through most of the design. So that's one way of managing that. If you don't have that choice, right? If you have a designer who says, no, it's really important that all the images have our brand gradient, or all of our headings have this brand gradient background on them, you will have to check it very carefully and make sure that every part of where that gradient touches text, that there is sufficient contrast there. So we have the 3 success criteria here. 1.4.3 is if you're checking at level AA. 1.4.6 is if you're checking at level AAA. And AAA requires a 7-to-1 ratio on regular size text, which is pretty extreme. And it rules out using any kind of mid-tone color. Like, you end up with only very light colors and very dark colors, because a 7-to-1 contrast ratio is a pretty extreme contrast ratio. And then for larger text, I think it's 4.5-to-1. I'm sorry, 4.5-to-1 on larger text for 1.4.6. And then 1.4.11 is the one that requires contrast of any interactive elements. So your borders around your form inputs, the edges of buttons, icons that are clickable, anything like that, your outlines for current focus state, all of those things have to meet a 3-to-1 contrast ratio with anything that they touch, anything that they're right up against. So that's what we're looking for with this one. And there's a couple of links here that you can go off and read if you're looking for more information about any of those. Okay. Our next check is for a skip link. And I'm sorry, I see that Alan says putting a transparent overlay for text over images can help. It definitely can. So you could use like a pale color one if you're trying to put dark text over an image. You could put like a 50% transparent light, white or pastel color over the image. Or if you're trying to put white text, you would want to use a dark color overlay over the image. That can help a lot. Even adding a gradient over the image. There's all kinds of little tricks that you can do to make sure that it works. Text shadow even technically works, but of course you'd want to make sure that it was really sufficient, and double check that in a browser very carefully, and make sure that all around all sides of every letter, it was still enough contrast against the background. All right, skip links give us just an easy way to skip past sections of a page. The most common one is going to be just the very first link on a page will be a link to skip over that whole header section and just go straight to the main content of the page, right? So typically that header content is the same from page to page, right? So once I've landed on one page of a site and I've heard what all is in the navigation and all of that, like, I don't need to hear it every single time. I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to read it. And if I'm a keyboard only user, I don't want to have to tab to get past all of the links that are in the header. So this provides me a way to just skip directly to the content. However, that's not the only skip link that can be useful. So depending on your page, how long your page is, how complex your page is, how many different sections of content, what type of content you have on there, you might want to have multiple skip links on a page. And typically how a skip link works is that it is invisible until it receives focus. So until a screen reader or a keyboard tabs to it and puts it in focus, it's not visible at all, and it kind of pops into view. And I can show you, let's see if this page has one actually. Oh, they have, theirs is just sitting right here on the top bar. So it is the first link on the page, but it's just always visible. So that's fine. So on the aardvark page, if I refresh over here, you can see that when I tab, I can skip to contact support, which is this little floating bubble down here. So because it is a fixed position, we needed an easy way for people to be able to get to it. And then if I click again, it will skip to the content, and that will take me past our header into just the main content of the page. So that's what we are looking for. And on most sites, they are going to be hidden until you hit the tab key on your keyboard and make them visible. Like I said, you can put them throughout your page. So if you have, like here we have this side nav, and maybe I want to have a separate link right before this side nav to skip it and go to something else. So that's a good example. Instead of having just the one that's at the very top of the page, like maybe I want to be able to skip this section, or maybe you have some other section that would be kind of cumbersome to tab through if I wasn't interested. And you can just put a skip link right before it. And like I said, they're invisible. They can be invisible until they receive focus. So it's not, distracting anybody or getting in anybody's way, but that functionality is still there and can make your website a lot more pleasant to use if somebody's going through with just a keyboard, or if they are going through with a screen reader. Now, one thing that is really common on the web, and I'm not exactly sure how this happens, but sites will have a skip link, but it doesn't actually work. So it'll be there, but you click it and it doesn't actually do anything. So make sure that when you check this one, that you don't just check to make sure the skip link is there, but that it actually goes to the thing that you're trying to skip to. I think people just forget that they're there, and then over time they just, rename IDs and move things around on the page, or take out a section and put something else instead. And they just kind of forget that there was something referring to that. And it happens a lot. There's a lot of broken skip links on the web. So don't just check to make sure it's there. Make sure it actually works and that it actually takes you to where you're trying to go. So here's our little bookmarklet. Check a skip link. So what this will do is it will find anywhere on the page that I have a skip link. It highlights it. It tells me that this is looking for ID main. And then it tells me my skip link connects here. So it's highlighting this main section of the page. So it has checked that it's there, and it has checked that it actually works and that it actually refers to something that actually exists on the page. So that can be super helpful. And that is the WCAG Success Criteria 2.4.1, which requires us to have some way of bypassing repeated content that appears on pages. All right, so let's go ahead and look at visible keyboard focus. So this one it's really common that there's issues with this. And sometimes it's something where it'll work on 90 or 95% of the links and buttons on a page, and then there'll just suddenly be one that it doesn't work on. And sometimes what that is it's like third-party content that got embedded on the site, or just something that got coded in kind of a weird way, and it suddenly doesn't have keyboard focus. So I'm going to go ahead and tab through this page. So I don't know, it's not super visible, but there is kind of a black outline that showed up around the skip to content link. So I'm going to tab again, and now I can kind of see it around the change text size or colors. I tab again, and I can go to translations. That's nice to know there's translations at this page. Tab again, and I can see a white outline now over here, because a black outline wouldn't show up. It wouldn't have enough contrast. Again, that needs to be 3:1 with the background. So I can see that I'm there. I tab again, and I end up at the Web Accessibility Initiative, get involved, about, and then we have our search box, and then our submit button for the search box. And then we'll go through the nav. We get a pretty nice visible So that's what we're looking for. You just want to keep hitting tab on your keyboard and make sure that you can always see what is the current element that we're on. As long as you can see that and it has at least a 3:1 contrast ratio with the background and or with the thing that it's up against. So again, we see that there's a little space, right, between this kind of light gray navigation item and the dark blue background, because I bet that that yellow does not have a 3:1 contrast ratio with that light gray, but it's fine because it doesn't have to, because there's a space, there's that offset in between where I can see that dark blue background, and that definitely has at least a 3:1 contrast ratio. So that's what we're looking for. So there's a significant proportion of users who cannot use a mouse and rely on different kinds of input devices for a computer that basically they act like a keyboard, whether it is a keyboard or not, right? There's sip and puff devices that you can control with your breath. There's devices that can be controlled with basically any part of your body that you can move. So things that could be attached to your cheek to detect, twitching, like you can kind of squinch up your face, right? Like to detect those kinds of things that can attach to your hands, to your feet, to your knees, like any part of your body. And then people can use that to basically simulate using tab and shift tab and things on a keyboard to move around a website and actually accomplish things. So that's why it's really important that we need to be able to see where we are on a page when we're using just the keyboard. And I do see that we have check keyboard focus on this page. Okay, it just triggers focus on everything on the page. So we can see everything that has focus, and we can see what that focus looks like. Now, I can immediately see one drawback to that is that this side menu, where they did very carefully put that offset so that the yellow wouldn't be up against that almost white pale gray. When I put everything in focus, I kind of lose that, right? And so you might think like, oh, that's going to fail because that white doesn't have enough contrast. But really, if I close that and go out of there and then tab through there, we can see that it's a different experience. So be thoughtful about that. And don't just rely on that bookmarklet on its own. If you see something there, you would definitely want, I picked the wrong test. I wanted keyboard focus. If you see something like that, you'd want to double check without using that bookmarklet to make sure that everything was okay. And we can see this little plus button, right, got a nice outline on it. My link got a nice outline on it. These got nice big outlines. All of these buttons have outlines, again, with that little offset so that I have the white background peeking out. Because otherwise, I think that's the same color, right? It looks like it's the same button color and the same outline color, and that would not pass. But because it has that little space in there, it's fine, and it does pass. All right, so this is WCAG 2.4.7, making sure focus is visible. And if we go over here and go to check keyboard focus, there we go. So we have a dotted orange one on there. I keep playing with it. I don't love the dotted orange. I might go back to a solid orange. I have a challenge, right, in that we have a lot of stuff that's on really light backgrounds and we have stuff that's on really dark backgrounds. So I'm trying to find a good style that I can use consistently that would be sufficient contrast on both. So it's still a work in progress, which I don't know. Every website is a work in progress until it's not online anymore, right? A website's never done. It's never finished. All right, so that is checking the keyboard focus, just making sure every little thing on that page that is interactive, whether it's a form field, it's a button, it's a link, I can see when it receives focus, and that focus has sufficient contrast. So our next thing is to check the language of the page. Now, if you're not aware, in the very top of an HTML document, you can specify what the language is. So most websites these days are not built by hand coding HTML. Most of them are built using different kinds of content management systems, whether that's WordPress, Drupal, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, etc., etc. And most of the time, those platforms take care of this for you. And you may even have like a settings screen where you can go and say, this website is in, French or Spanish or English or whatever it happens to be. And that coding part gets taken care of for you. So most of the time, we're not hand coding that much anymore in the modern web, but it is still important that it's there. And that is important because that language, screen readers are going to check that language to figure out which basically like dictionary they should use for determining the pronunciation of words that are on the page. And if you say your page is in English, but it's actually in Spanish, the screen reader is going to try to use the English dictionary and pronunciation rules to read Spanish. And it's not going to go well, right? Because those two languages, they have different pronunciation rules. So you want to make sure that a page is always saying what language it is. And we have a little bookmarklet here, which is going to open up this modal dialog and tell me, yes, this page is in English. So you have kind of two options when you're specifying a language. You can just do the there's a 2-character abbreviation, which we can see EN is English. And then we can see in these screenshots here that JA is Japanese and DE is German. You can also put a hyphen or an underscore. It depends on which system you're using, which is not very helpful. And then a modifier so that you could distinguish, for example, between Spanish as it is spoken in Spain and Spanish as it is spoken in another region of the world, whether that would be Mexico or Argentina or wherever. Because I'm sure, as you know, right, like American English is not the same as British English, is not the same as Australian English, is not the same as Canadian English. And there's a particular flavor, right, of languages that are spoken around the world. And so you can take that even further and be specific that this page is in US English, for example, or UK English, or whatever it happens to be. But you do want to make sure that you are saying which language it should be. And this little bookmarklet makes it easy. So check language. So yes, my site does say it is American English. So EN US. So we went the extra step further to say it is American English. So don't use British or Australian pronunciations when you're reading through content on this site. Use the American pronunciations. All right, and that refers to two things. So we have 3.1.1, which is the language of the page. So every page itself should have a language. And then, of course, you could have, right, I could have an English blog. And maybe in one of my blog posts, in the middle of the post, I want to share a Spanish poem. So if I just type into my, WordPress or whatever, where I'm sharing that blog post, a screen reader is going to come along to that and try to read that Spanish poem with the English pronunciation. So there is a way that just like you can specify the language on a whole page, you can specify a language on a part of a page. And that's what 3.1.2 is. So that if I have a little part of the page in another language, that I actually say what that language is. So I would want to take, a div or whatever that's wrapping that poem and say this div is in Spanish, so that the screen reader would understand that it needs to use different pronunciation for that section of the page. The most common place that that comes up is if you have translations available. So here, right, we've got a list and we're saying the name of the translation in its native language and then in English. So we would want to, every single one of these would need to have a language, right, specifier on it to say, this is in German, this is in Greek, this is in Spanish, right? But not this part of it, just this first part. So that's the most common place that that comes up on most websites, is that if you do have some kind of translations available and you're saying those translations in their native language, you want to make sure that you're doing that in a correct way, so that they get pronounced correctly. All right. Wow, I thought we would probably get through most of this, but we still have a few things left. So I guess we'll pick up next time and we'll go through Zoom, captions, transcripts, audio descriptions, forms, and required fields. And we'll go through how to check all of those different things. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks for having patience with me while I dealt with my mouse and monitor situation. So hopefully I can get that resolved. I don't know. My monitor just decided it needed a day off, I guess, and it just decided not to work. It is a lovely day here in Los Angeles. I think it's just under 70 degrees, blue skies, sunny, like couldn't be any better, right? I grew up in Pennsylvania, so this is kind of December weather that I moved here for. Perfectly happy with it. But if you enjoy the cold and snow, I hope you have lots of it. I think there is quite a lot of snow happening in other parts of the country right now. And I hope that you enjoy it. But anyway, it won't last forever if you don't. It'll melt come spring and you can go back to nice weather. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time, 2 weeks from today. We'll pick up where we left off and continue going through manual accessibility testing. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.